Welcome back to the deep dive. We are right back into it, continuing our big look at maybe the greatest mystery in, well, the entire Wasteland saga. What on earth happened to the lone wanderer?
It really is the ultimate cold case, isn't it?
Mhm.
When we last left off, the Wanderer had just wrapped up Broken Steel. That's 2277. And they were, calling them overpowered is kind of an understatement.
Totally. Age 20, basically immune to lethal radiation, a knight in the Brotherhood of Steel, the person who crippled the Enclave on the East Coast. Oh, and casually owns a working alien spaceship.
Yeah, the Mothership Zeta thing, that's a big one we'll come back to. A literal demigod with interstellar capability.
And then nothing, just silence. A huge gap opens up in the timeline. We've got this, decade-long void between the Wanderer hitting peak power in 2277 and the next big game, Fallout 4, kicking off in 2287.
Or even more tantalizingly, that 4-year window leading up to 2281, which is when Fallout New Vegas starts. That 4-year gap. That's really our focus today.
Exactly. So our mission for this part of the deep dive is tackling that massive continental question. Did the lone wanderer actually wander 2,000 miles west across all that devastation to become Courier 6 in the Mojave Desert?
It's the theory, the big one, the two wastelands head canon. We're going to dig into why it's so incredibly popular, why it feels right to so many people, and then look at the hard, cold, canonical facts that, well, pretty much shatter it completely.
Right. Gotta understand the appeal before you bring out the lore hammer.
Yeah.
So, first things first. Why would the Wanderer even leave the Capital Wasteland? They just saved it.
Yeah, you'd think they'd stick around, right? Take a victory lap.
Yeah.
But really, the reasons for leaving are almost overwhelming when you look closely.
Yeah.
Let's unpack that inevitability of exile.
Okay, section 1. Why live home? Despite being the big hero, they were also incredibly isolated, weren't they? No real anchor left.
Absolutely no anchor. Think about the core motivation. Find Dad. Finish Project Purity. Well, Project Purity is running, but James is dead. The whole reason for the journey, the emotional linchpin, is gone.
So the primary objective is met, but the personal connection is severed. What do you do then? You've achieved the impossible, saved the region, but the person driving you is just gone.
And where do you go? Home. Well, Vault 101, their actual childhood home, that door slammed shut. Whether you sided with the Martyr or the Overseer, the end result is pretty much the same.
Right. The vault closes itself off. They see the Wanderer as, what, a contamination? A threat?
Both, probably. The Wanderer is the outside world made manifest. Their very existence, their legend, it's destabilizing for that controlled little experiment. You can't just slot a wasteland demigod back into vault life. A Marada, even if she's your friend, basically has to say, you're too much, you have to go so we can survive.
Wow. So save your father's dreams, save the wasteland, and lose your home in the process. That's bleak.
It's a pure Fallout irony, isn't it? And the other places. Mega 10, Tenpenny Tower. Let's be honest, those were just convenient spots to dump gear and maybe grab a quest.
Yeah, glorified stash boxes. Not exactly deep community roots.
Not at all. They weren't building a life there.
Yeah.
Any companions like Fox or Charon were more like allies of convenience or transactional relationships, even with high karma. The lone part of Lone Wanderer feels earned,
Yeah.
They end up profoundly solitary.
And that solitude, that lack of deep connection, plays right into the instability with their biggest potential home, the Brotherhood of Steel.
Oh, definitely. Their position in the Brotherhood was entirely dependent on one man, Elder Owen Lyons.
Who immediately makes them a knight after they wake up from that radiation coma in Broken Steel, which is a huge deal.
A huge deal, and a huge departure from Brotherhood tradition. Lyons' whole compassionate, outward-looking, help the Wastelanders philosophy was already controversial within the Brotherhood ranks, bringing in this powerful outsider, giving them rank. That was all Lyons.
But Lyons' health was failing. That's mentioned, right? His leadership was precarious.
Exactly. It was always hanging by a thread. And everyone knew, or at least suspected, that when Lyons passed, things would change dramatically.
Which leads directly to Arthur Maxson.
The heir apparent, descended from the original founder, Roger Maxson. He represents the old guard, the return to the Brotherhood's core tenets, technology hoarding, isolationism, military structure, everything Lyons was moving away from.
So the Lone Wanderer, this symbol of Lyons' progressive era, suddenly becomes an ideological liability under Maxson?
A massive one. Think about it. You've got this 20-year-old powerhouse who is radiation immune, incredibly skilled, answers to basically no one, and embodies the humanitarian approach Maxson wants to scrap.
And they have enormous influence and respect after stopping the Enclave. Wouldn't Maxson maybe try to use that? Co-opt them?
He might try, initially. But the Wanderer is just too independent. too powerful. Maxon demands order, hierarchy following the Codex. Can you imagine the Lone Wanderer taking orders to, I don't know, catalog laser pistols after they just saved DC?
No, especially not if they've got, an alien spaceship parked somewhere.
Right. That's the other thing. The Mothership Zeta acquisition. That makes the Wanderer not just an ideological problem, but a strategic one. They possess technology far beyond what even the Brotherhood has easy access to. They're a rogue state unto themselves.
So trying to force them into Maxon's rigid structure would inevitably lead to conflict. They'd either have to submit, which seems unlikely,
Or resist. And resisting would make them a symbol for anyone unhappy with Maxon's leadership, a potential catalyst for civil war within the Brotherhood itself.
So leaving wasn't just wandering off. It might have been the only way to avoid tearing the Brotherhood apart or being forced out violently. A strategic withdrawal, almost.
Precisely. They saved the Capital Wasteland, and then maybe they saved the Brotherhood from itself by simply disappearing. Which ties perfectly into how their legend evolves.
Ah, the Moira Brown connection. From the game guide stuff, right? The notes written later on.
Yeah, the supplemental material. It's controversial for some, but it gives us this glimpse into the future. Around 2297, 20 years after Broken Steel. And by then, the Lone Wanderer has well and truly vanished.
Vanished to the point of myth. The notes say people couldn't even agree on basic facts anymore.
Exactly. Was the Wanderer a man or a woman? A saint or a monster? The legend became so distorted, so detached from reality, that the actual person was lost. They became a boogeyman or a folk hero, but not a person anymore.
Which reinforces the idea that they just couldn't fit into normal society after everything. They became too big, too strange. The weight of their own legend kind of pushed them out.
The only place for a myth like that is the wilderness, the unknown. Or maybe somewhere else entirely. But that leads us westward.
Okay, Section 2. The Big Leap. The Continent Crossing. The Lone Wanderer becomes Courier 6. This theory is just, it's everywhere in the fandom.
It's huge, contentious, yeah, but massively popular. The whole two wastelands concept connecting Fallout 3 and New Vegas protagonists.
And you can see the appeal, right? It neatly solves the what happened next problem. They didn't settle down, they just kept going, living up to the Wanderer title.
It provides that narrative purpose, and crucially, the timeline seems to work at first glance. Just barely.
Let's lay it out again. Fallout 3 and Broken Steel end in 2277. New Vegas starts in 2281. That leaves 4 years.
4 years. To get from DC to Nevada, that's about 2,000 miles.
Across hell, basically. Super mutants, raiders, deathclaws, rad scorpions, hostile environments, probably remnants of the Enclave or other factions.
It sounds insane for a normal person. Absolutely impossible. But are we talking about a normal person?
No, we established that. Radiation immunity, peak skills, probably power armor, access to advanced tech, maybe even salvaged vehicles. Fans will love to speculate about finding a working highwayman car or a motorcycle, right?
Or even, fixing up an Enclave vertibird they captured. For this character, this demigod of a teenager, as you call them, maybe the physical journey isn't the most impossible part.
Okay, maybe physically possible, but the theory's real hook, the thing that makes it stick for people, is the psychological angle, isn't it? The Courier's backstory.
Exactly. The Courier starts New Vegas, famously getting shot twice in the head by Benny, left for dead in a shallow grave near Good Springs. They survive, but they have amnesia, a blank slate.
And the headcanon jumps right on that. Those bullets weren't just inconvenient, they were the reset button. They wiped the Lone Wanderer's memories, their skills, their past traumas.
It explains everything. Why the Courier doesn't remember DC, why they don't start with maxed out stats, why they seem so detached initially. The trauma of the shooting is the bridge that allows the Lone Wanderer persona to be overwritten by the Courier persona.
It's a brutal but narratively elegant way to connect the dots. It also explains why this seemingly ordinary mail carrier suddenly becomes capable of taking on the NCR, the Legion, Mr. House, and deciding the fate of the entire Mojave. The underlying power level is still there, just latent, forgotten.
And players lean into this hard. You see so many people intentionally designing their Courier character to look identical to their Lone Wanderer playthrough. It's about maintaining that personal continuity, even if the games don't explicitly state it. Player agency filling the void.
Beyond the amnesia, there are those little breadcrumbs in the lore, especially from the DLCs that seem to hint at it, like Ulysses and Lonesome Road.
Ulysses. The original Courier 6, the one who refused the platinum chip delivery. He talks to the player Courier and he makes these cryptic remarks.
About the Courier having this weird fixation on old world symbols, especially Enclave symbols. Things like the flag, the tech.
Yeah, an unnatural focus, he calls it. Which is weird, right? Why would some random Mojave courier care about the Enclave? This group primarily defeated on the East Coast years earlier.
Unless they were the person who defeated the Enclave. Unless that focus is like muscle memory, deeply buried trauma and experience bleeding through the amnesia. It makes perfect sense if the courier is the wanderer.
It fits so well.
Yeah.
That's the seductive power of the theory. And you add in little things, like the dog meat companion. The lone wanderer canonically travels with dog meat, the constant presence of a loyal dog companion in the series. It reinforces that archetype of the solitary hero and their dog, linking the two characters thematically.
Okay, let's throw in a fan question here. This is from Bloatfly Eater 69. Classy, they ask. Okay, wanderer courier makes some sense, but what about their personalities? My wanderer was a total saint, Capital Wasteland savior. My courier, total psycho mercenary, just out for caps. How does that track?
That's a great question, Bloatflighter 69. It gets into role-playing versus potential character arc, and, well, think about what the Lone Wanderer went through. They might start as a savior, but the events of Fallout 3 are incredibly traumatic.
Finding your dad only to watch him die, being betrayed or rejected by your home vault, making impossible choices, killing potentially hundreds, maybe thousands of people by age 20.
Exactly. That kind of psychic toll could absolutely shatter someone's idealism. You could argue the Wanderer was already becoming hardened, maybe even unstable, by the end of Broken Steel. Then add 4 years of brutal cross-country survival, seeing the worst the Wasteland has to offer day after day.
And then getting shot twice in the head and left for dead.
Yeah. It's not hard to imagine that sequence of events transforming a chaotic good hero into a cynical, pragmatic, maybe even ruthless survivor who thinks, been there, saved that wasteland, didn't get me anywhere. This time I'm getting paid. The courier's cynicism could be the lone wanderer's final defense mechanism.
It really does paint a compelling picture, a complete tragic arc. It feels right.
It feels very right, which is why it's such a shame it's canonically impossible.
And here comes the hammer. Section 3. Shattering the illusion. Let's get into the definitive lore breaks.
All right, so we love the theory. It's elegant. It makes sense emotionally. But the timeline. The timeline is absolute. And it just doesn't work. Not even close when you look at the specifics.
Okay, lay it on us. The fatal flaw.
It all comes down to one single unavoidable year, 2277.
Okay, 2277. We know that's when Fallout 3 and Broken Steel conclude. The Wanderer is aggravating Project Purity, fighting Colonel Autumn, surviving the Purifier, taking down the Enclave at Adams Air Force Base. Busy year in D.C.
Extremely busy. Decisive battles. The absolute peak of the Lone Wanderer's campaign on the East Coast. They are the central figure in these events. Meanwhile, what's happening 2,000 miles away in the Mojave?
Don't tell me.
The first battle for Hoover Dam. The initial major clash between the NCR and Caesar's Legion for control of the dam.
Yeah.
It also takes place in 2277.
Wow, okay, so the Wanderer cannot physically be in two places at once, leading major military campaigns on opposite sides of the continent in the same calendar year.
Not unless they mastered teleportation alongside alien tech, no. It's a direct, unresolvable contradiction.
Yeah.
And it gets worse.
How does it get worse?
Because of Lonesome Road and the events of the Divide, the courier's backstory involves delivering a package, inadvertently, it turns out, that triggers nuclear detonations in the Divide, creating that hellscape and earning them a dark reputation. Ulysses tells us this happened before the first battle for Hoover Dam.
So still in 2277, or possibly even late 2276.
Right. Meaning, for the theory to hold, the Lone Wanderer would have had to finish saving D.C., somehow instantly cross the country, establish themselves enough as a courier to get this critical, dangerous job, deliver the package that nukes the Divide, and then potentially be involved around Hoover Dam, all while simultaneously being documented as fighting the Enclave back east.
Yeah, okay. That's not just improbable, that's physically impossible according to the established timeline. The dates simply do not allow it.
It completely breaks the theory. It ignores the fact that the Lone Wanderer was deeply embroiled in the Capital Wasteland's fate at the exact same time the Courier was establishing their own separate, significant history in the West.
And it does a disservice to the Courier too, right? Trying to make them just an extension of the Wanderer ignores their own implied history.
Absolutely. The lore, especially hints from Ulysses and other dialogue, suggests the Courier spent considerable time in the core region, California, Nevada, maybe Utah, Montana, building connections, making deliveries, gaining experience before 2281. They weren't some fresh arrival in late 2277.
They needed years to become the person Benny thought was worth ambushing for the Platinum Chip. Years the Lone Wanderer was spending fighting super mutants in the Enclave.
Exactly. And let's not forget the age thing again. The lone wanderer is 20 in 2277, meaning they'd be 21 or maybe 22 by the time they supposedly caused the Divide incident and fought at Hoover Dam.
Whereas the Courier, thanks to the character creator, can easily be in their 30s, 40s, or even older. An experienced older courier with a reputation makes way more sense for that role than a barely out of their teens recent arrival from the East Coast.
It just fits the narrative of New Vegas much better. The timeline, the implied history, potential age, it all points to the courier being their own person with their own past, completely separate from the lone wanderer.
So, case closed. The two wastelands theory, as much as we might love it, is definitively busted by the calendar. 2277 kills it dead.
Cold, hard, canonical truth. There were two different heroes facing two different apocalypses at the same time.
All right, so if the Wanderer didn't go west to become the Courier, what did happen in that missing decade? This brings us to Section 4, fan questions and alternative fates.
Yes, now we can get into the really interesting possibilities, the ones that aren't immediately shot down by the timeline, and some great questions from listeners too.
Let's start with one digging into the Wanderer's unique nature. This comes from Radchild Forever. Nice, they ask. You mentioned the radiation immunity being key. Is it ever really explained how that works? Was it something from Vault 101's experiments, genetics, or just game mechanics?
That's a fantastic question, because it really highlights what makes the Lone Wanderer unique among Fallout protagonists. The short answer is no, we don't get a detailed biological explanation. But the fact of it is undeniable. Surviving that massive radiation dose in the purifier control room in broken steel isn't just plot armor.
Right, they go into a coma for 2 weeks, but they survive something that should have instantly killed anyone else.
Exactly. It confirms they are, as the sources say, biologically different. Whether that's purely genetic luck, maybe a mutation picked up from the weird Capital Wasteland environment, or even something related to Vault 101's purpose, we don't know for sure. But the result is functional immunity to lethal radiation.
Plus, by that point, they're probably loaded with Radaway, Rad-X, and have access to Brotherhood medical tech, right?
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about a character with, quote, ridiculous resources. They have the best chems, the best gear, potentially advanced medical knowledge or access through the Brotherhood. So even if lower levels of radiation still affected them, they had unprecedented means to manage it. They've essentially transcended normal wasteland biology.
Okay, next up, another huge crossover theory, this one connecting to Fallout 4, from user Chaos Agent LW. Okay, the Deacon Lone Wanderer theory. It sounds nuts, but Deacon lies constantly about his past, just like someone trying to disappear would. And he mentioned stuff about DC. What's the lore say on this one?
The Deacon theory. This one has legs, much more so than the Courier theory. Deacon, the Railroad's master of disguise in Fallout 4, is famously impossible to pin down. His backstory changes every time you talk to him. He could have been anyone, anywhere.
Which makes him a perfect candidate for a legendary figure trying to vanish, right?
Exactly. If the Lone Wanderer wanted to disappear, becoming a chameleon-like spy who constantly adopts new identities seems like a pretty smart way to do it. And, as the question notes, Deacon does drop hints. He makes comments about the Capital Wasteland, like the water being drinkable, now a direct reference to Project Tyranny's success.
That feels like a deliberate nod, doesn't it?
It really does, and psychologically it fits. Imagine the Wanderer, traumatized, burdened by their legend, maybe disillusioned, reinventing themselves completely, dedicating their life to a secretive cause like the Railroad, always hiding. It tracks with a character trying to escape who they were.
So the personality fits, the hints are there.
Yeah.
What's the catch? Is it the timeline again? Fallout 4 is 2287, 10 years after Broken Steel.
The timeline is trickier here, but not necessarily a hard stop like with the Courier. Some sources, like terminal entries within the Railroad HQ, seem to suggest Deacon has been with the Railroad for a long time, potentially even before 2277 when the Wanderer was still busy in DC.
So he might have already been Deacon while the Wanderer was still, like, fighting super mutants in the metro tunnels?
That's the potential contradiction.
Yeah.
However, this is where the theory gets clever. If the Lone Wanderer is Deacon, who's to say they didn't use their genius-level hacking skills, maxed intelligence, science, to retroactively create Deacon's earlier records?
Wow. So they didn't just adopt the identity, they backdated it within the Railroad's own systems to make it look like he'd always been there.
Precisely. It's the ultimate disappearing act. You don't just change your face, you change the past. Given the Wanderer's skills and resources, altering some terminal entry seems entirely plausible. It neatly sidesteps the main chronological objection.
Okay, that's pretty convincing, actually. It moves it from impossible to highly speculative but plausible. Much better footing than the Courier idea.
Definitely. It remains one of the strongest possibilities for the Wanderer's fate on Earth. But
Yeah.
what if they didn't stay on Earth?
Ah, yes. The final frontier. Path 1. The Zetan starship. We mentioned it earlier, Mothership Zeta. The Lone Wanderer is the only player character who ends up owning a fully functional alien spacecraft.
And not just the ship. It comes with orbital weapons platforms, the Bradley Hercules arrays. After taking out the Enclave's satellite network at Adams AFB, the Wanderer effectively controls Earth orbit, or at least has the most powerful toys up there.
So why stick around dealing with raiders and Mirelurks when you can explore the galaxy?
Exactly. This theory suggests the Wanderer, maybe with companions like Fox, Dogmeat, maybe even some of the rescued humans or friendly aliens from the ship, just left. They went full sci-fi adventurer. Star Trek, Guardians of the Galaxy, whatever you want to call it.
It makes sense from a power scaling perspective, right? What challenge is left on Earth for someone who can call down orbital strikes and owns a spaceship?
Pretty much none. Only the vastness of space, maybe finding other Z-hand forces or entirely new alien species, could offer a comparable challenge. It's the ultimate Wanderer fate, leaving the planet itself behind.
And this connects to that funny little fan theory about the crashed UFO you find in Fallout 4.
Yes, the idea that the crashed Zetan ship near Oberlin Station wasn't an invasion attempt, but actually the Lone Wanderer having a bit of a fender bender in orbit.
Like, they forgot to signal before changing lanes between Saturn and Jupiter and accidentally bumped a Zetan scout ship, sending it crashing down to Massachusetts?
Or maybe they were trying out the death ray and miscalculated the trajectory. Just Tuesday for the Lone Wanderer. It's hilarious, but it does fit that chaotic demigod profile. They're out there exploring, fighting, and maybe occasionally causing interstellar incidents that have consequences back on Earth.
It definitely explains the 10-year silence. Hard to get messages back from the Andromeda Galaxy.
It wraps everything up very neatly, if fantastically. But there's one more path. The darker one.
Path 2, the tragic exit. The idea that the Wanderer didn't go west, didn't go to space, didn't become Deacon. They just died somewhere on the East Coast.
Yeah. This theory usually ties back into the rise of Arthur Maxon and the Change in Brotherhood leadership. Maybe the Wanderer didn't leave. Maybe they tried to stay, tried to integrate, or tried to resist Maxon, and maybe they died for it. Perhaps heroically, alongside Sarah Lyons. We know she dies sometime between the games. Maybe the Wanderer fell with her in some incident that Maxon later spun to consolidate his power.
Or maybe less heroically.
Or less heroically. Maybe they were seen as too much of a liability, a symbol of the old ways, and were quietly removed, assassinated.
Yeah.
Or maybe they just vanished in the wasteland. A powerful figure, yes, but the wasteland is still dangerous. A lucky shot, an accident, an illness.
And Maxon's Brotherhood would have reason to maybe downplay or even erase the memory of this independent, chaotic figure who didn't fit their new world order.
Exactly. It feeds back into Moira's notes about the legend becoming distorted. If the reality, a hero's ignominious death or political assassination, was inconvenient, the new regime could just let the truth fade into myth and rumor. Let people argue if they were a saint or monster, because the real person is gone and safely buried.
It's a grim possibility, but it feels very Fallout. Heroes don't always get happy endings. Sometimes they just disappear and the machine moves on.
It raises that question too. Could Maxon's Brotherhood even take down the Lone Wanderer in a straight fight, given their power?
Seems unlikely. It would have to be betrayal, ambush, something covert.
Which again reinforces why disappearance, whether into the shadows as Deacon or into the stars via Zeta, might have been the most appealing or safest option for the Wanderer themselves.
Okay, so wrapping up part 2 here. We've journeyed across the continent and back, and maybe even into orbit. What's the big takeaway?
The big definitive takeaway is that the Lone Wanderer Courier 6 theory, while incredibly appealing and fun for headcanon, is canonically impossible. The timeline, specifically the events of 2277 on both coasts, absolutely forbids it.
They were saving DC while the Courier's dark past was being forged out west. 2 different people, 2 different stories happening at the same time.
Exactly. So the Wanderer's fate, that missing decade, has to lie elsewhere. Either they stayed east and met a tragic end, or were erased by Maxon's regime.
Or they adopted a new identity, like maybe Deacon in the Commonwealth.
Or they used their unique asset, Mothership Zeta, to leave Earth's problems behind entirely and become an interstellar adventurer. Those seem like the most plausible remaining paths.
And that sets us up perfectly for part 3. Next time, we're going to dive deep exclusively into those final major theories. Deacon and the space pirate angle. We'll really unpack the implications.
Yeah, what does it really mean for a character to potentially transcend the setting itself? We'll explore the evidence for Deacon, the logistics of space travel, and the philosophical weight of those choices.
But before we go, I want to leave you all with something to chew on. A final provocative thought for this part. We've talked a lot about the Lone Wanderer's immense power, their isolation, maybe even their psychological instability after everything they went through, killing people they knew, making impossible choices.
Mm-hmm.
So consider this. Does the title Lone Wanderer just describe their journey? Or was the solitude, the eventual disappearance, maybe a necessary act? Was it a form of self-imposed containment? For someone that powerful, that potentially chaotic, is the most selfless act they could perform for the world they saved. To simply remove themselves from it, to protect it from their own influence.
It's the ultimate paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
The savior becoming so powerful that their very presence is a potential threat. Sometimes maybe the best way to ensure peace is just to leave.
Something to think about. Keep digging for those answers, everyone, and we will see you next time for the concluding part of the Lone Wanderer's missing decade.